welcome to Insights, a podcast focused on bringing you interesting conversations. As a college student with a love for learning and an interest in communications, I have conversations with others that are focused on learning more and going deeper. In this series before the November 8th election, I interview candidates for the Board of Education in Ravenna, Michigan, my hometown and where I went to school. I hope these conversations help you learn more about who these candidates are, what they believe, and really, just get to know them better. Before we begin, I have to include a disclaimer. Some of these episodes were recorded at Ravenna Baptist Church and Ravenna High School. Neither of these institutions endorses any candidate running for office, and do not necessarily hold any views expressed by myself or any candidate that I interview. Their facilities were simply used as spaces in which to record. One final note. I have my own personal beliefs and views just like everyone else. Doing these interviews exposed me to a lot of new ideas, many of which I'm still forming my opinions on. I do not endorse any specific candidate. However, you may see some of my personal beliefs come through as a natural part of the discussion. Please reach out if you have any questions or concerns. I'd be happy to discuss anything that was said. With that out of the way, please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Justin Bamford. No, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for doing it. I think it's super cool that you're doing this. I was actually we just had a school board meeting and we were wrapping up after the meeting. I was talking to Mr. Helmer and some of the board members there about you doing this, and Helmer wasn't aware that you were doing it and thought it was super cool. Everybody else thought it was a super neat thing. So thanks for doing it for the community. It's kind of a cool thing to
for
have
sure.
out there.
For sure. And I've told all my guests so far this too. I really just wanted to give the community a way just to learn more about the people, because I feel like so much in the election, we don't really know who all of you guys are. I know a lot of you, but I also didn't know everyone. There's been a few people I've interviewed so far I didn't know too much about. So, no, it's fun to just learn and then at very least inform my vote this coming November. So, yeah, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you get to vote this coming November.
I do.
For the first time. Nice.
Actually, my first vote was on the bond proposal.
Nice.
That was, what was that, May?
Yeah.
Whenever the first one was, that was my first vote in an election. So that was pretty cool.
That is cool. That's always cool. Well, good for you to be civically engaged. Is this podcast venture a new thing for you for this particular subject, or were you doing podcasting prior to
No,
starting this?
I wasn't really doing too much before. Honestly, it's kind of a dual nature thing. I wanted to learn this podcast space a little bit more, but I didn't want to just go out and record myself talking. So I figured, what's a good way to learn the space? Well, I figured with an election coming up, this might be a good way to do it. And I'm a teacher's kid. I'm a nerd, so that's the first thing I thought of anyway. But
That's cool.
No, it worked out pretty well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, good for you for doing it. That's awesome.
For sure. No, and thank you again for coming on. We try to keep this pretty laid back. Cameras are rolling. Audio's going. Let me just make sure audio's going. Yeah, we are set to go. Perfect. All right. Well, if you don't mind, can we jump right into the questions here?
Absolutely. However you want to go.
Perfect. Well, I know you a little bit, not a whole lot. But I wanted to ask, just for everyone who may not know, tell us a little bit about Justin Bamford. Who is he? What's he all about? Just so the community can know a little bit more about you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess with your family, I go way back, so you know me a little bit.
That is true.
I transplanted to this community in 2008, so about 14 years now. But prior, I actually grew up in Howard City, Tri-County area, so I went to Tri-County schools with your mother and uncle.
Which I did not know until a few years ago. That was a very interesting thing to learn, that you had went to school with my uncle. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, Don was just a couple years ahead of me. And actually, I kind of grew up in your grandpa's church as far as we actually used his church for the gymnasium for school, for middle school gym class. We went across the street to the church. And going there for middle school gym. And then actually I attended the church off and on I had a girlfriend in high school for 3 years of school, same girlfriend, and her family went to your grandpa's church. So I went to some youth group stuff there and some church services as well. So kind of small world. But yeah, I grew up there and a lifelong resident of West Michigan, and then went off to college at Alma College.
Okay.
And that's where I met my wife, Joy.
Gotcha.
Who I think you've also met. And
I believe so. And remind me again, I've heard of Alma. Where is it at?
pretty much in the geographical center of the mitten. So St.
Perfect.
Louis, Michigan is...
Gotcha.
St. Louis, Michigan is smack dab geographical center of the mitten. And
Gotcha.
Alma is like 2 miles west of there. So just a 20-minute jaunt from Mount Pleasant in central Michigan.
Gotcha.
So very close up there. Went to school there, and that's where I met Joy. Actually met her early on in school, but then we ended up being lab partners in human dissection lab of all things, and it was kind of, there's my Jeopardy story if that ever happens. But
there you go.
Yeah, we started hanging out then, and now 21 years later after I graduated there, been in Ravenna for 14 years and have 3 kids here, 3 bulldogs. So my daughter Bree graduated in 2020.
Yep.
She's going to Grand Valley, living at home still, doing great. And then I have Cole, who's a 8th grader this year, and then Austin, who's in 5th grade. So I'm a husband, parent. I like to see myself as a leader in the community and at work. I lead a financial institution for a living, so I'm the CEO of a credit union, Harbor Light Credit Union in Whitehall. I've been in the credit union space now for 17 years, and then try to give back a lot of my time to the community. I've been coaching, as soon as I moved to this community in '08, I've been coaching. Started with soccer with my daughter's team, and t-ball, baseball, softball, basketball,
For sure.
Whole 9 yards, and then just I'm on a whole lot of boards. I think I'm on 6 boards right now, so I try to give back a lot where I can and keep busy and never a dull moment. But
Well, I'm sure with all of that, you have very few of those dull moments. Yeah.
it's busy, but it's the best. It's the best part of life, I think, where kids are young and just trying to soak it all up. And
For sure.
in our spare time, we really enjoy the outdoors. We camp a lot, hunting, fishing, playing sports outside, going to the beach, rock hounding, that sort of stuff. Just trying to spend time together with the family outside as much as possible. So
For sure.
Probably a good start for about me.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, what beach do you guys usually go to?
I guess our go-to as far as being here in the area is Hoffmaster.
Yeah.
So we go to Hoffmaster State
Yep,
Park.
my dad loves that.
Well, we love to camp there. We camp there at least once every year, and we try to repeat a couple of key spots every year, and then find a couple of new ones every year. So we go to
For sure.
the state park campground every year, and then as far as if we're not camping, we'll go to Pere Marquette Beach. We love Pere Marquette too. So
Gotcha.
if we're going to the big lake, we go to those 2 spots typically.
No, that's sweet.
Yeah.
That's sweet. Yeah. That's a really good start here. And you kind of talked a little bit about this, moved here in '08. But what's your history with Ravenna? Connection to the community, people you know around here? Obviously a transplant, but still very involved. So yeah, just what's your history with Ravenna? What do you love most about it?
Great question. History with Ravenna, I guess going back to high school, I had a few tough battles against the Ravenna football team back in the 90s, mid-90s. I played against the Benny Clark era Ravenna teams, so there's a couple state champ teams mixed in there, and we always came out on the wrong end of those football games, like most did in that time against Ravenna. And so,
what's the cheer? Should have been a bulldog, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And actually, for me, it was more. At that time, never a bulldog. Oh my gosh, just get my heart broken all the time. But then, basically when Joy and I were living in the Cedar Springs, Rockford area, we both got new jobs over here in Muskegon, started on the same day back in '07, and we're like, well, we're sick of making the drive. So got out an old school Michigan, an atlas. You probably aren't familiar with such a
I know what you're talking about.
Concept.
I know what you're talking about.
Piece of paper, each page is like that big, and we pulled it out and said, we want to live in this area, and we drew a circle, a literal
there
circle
you go.
on the map between Coopersville and Fruitport and Bailey and Kent City, Sparta, and said we want to be out in the country, like I raised my kids, like I was raised out in the country. Just small town values, good folks, country living. within a half-hour drive of downtown Muskegon and downtown Grand Rapids, basically. So
Right.
we drew the circle,
Yeah.
started looking at houses, and we found the property that we ended up buying. It was perfect. I mean, Ravenna's got those small town values and good folks, and it's just a lot like where both my wife and I grew up. She grew up in Leslie on the east side of the state after living in rural northwest Ohio for most of her formative years, and then I grew up in Howard City, so it was just kind of like transplanting our family values from growing up to a similar community and that met the needs of our work, our careers. So that's what ended up moving us here. And I guess that's a good segue to my favorite part about Ravenna. It is just the good people and the true community concept of people helping people and small town values. And I mean, it's just now my wife's working tonight. She works nights, so it's busy day on Mondays with soccer, with piano, with cross country, with football, with her going to work. I had a school board meeting, then I had this, and so I met her at the football field, dropped off dinner, came to the school board meeting, had the football coach who's a friend of mine, dropped my kid off at the school board meeting so I could come up here, and then out in the parking lot while we were exchanging, he's giving me my kid. It's a couple other people I know just walk up from the school board and from walking by, and we're all talking and buying some raffle tickets for a local fundraiser, and just it's just it takes a family, a community, and a family to kind of help out, look out for each other's kids, and to watch out for each other. And that's how I grew up, and that's what I like most about this community is the values.
For sure. No, I totally agree with that too. It is definitely a unique thing that as I'm meeting more and more people, I'm realizing not everyone has gotten. So a huge part of that,
Don't take it for granted, because I've gone away to school and lived in cities and other places and traveled a little bit, and it's not like that everywhere. And it's easy to take for granted when you grow up and that's all you know, but it's pretty great.
Yeah, no, and I have a feeling I'll probably be drawn back to here at some point. But yeah, no, that's really cool. Great segue into the next thing too. You obviously do have a love for the community. Why are you running for school board? Is it general reason? Is there a specific issue you want to address? I found it's different with everyone so far that I've interviewed. A lot of the same concepts, but still it's unique to each individual.
Yeah, no, I'll start with no specific issue, no axe to grind or otherwise.
Gotcha.
I guess I'm kind of a glutton for punishment, because I got on the school board initially back in 2018 when it wasn't the best of times for our district from a district, I'll just say district continuity perspective, strategic performance overall. Objectives and goals of the district weren't.
Sorry to interrupt here too, but no, I had forgotten until just now. You have served a little bit before, so no, that is really cool to hear. So you've served since 2018, on and off, or has it been pretty solid?
Actually, and it's interesting. I've served now in 2 different stints on and off since 2018 by filling vacancies that were created when others on the board resigned. And
Gotcha. Okay.
Basically went to the board and said I would be interested in filling that vacancy. So I've never had the opportunity arise to actually run for the school board as far as a voted position until this time came around, because once it came on my radar back in 2018, I was appointed and then served for a while, then was off for a year or so and then back on. And now that the position I was in is ending, I need to decide, do I want to run again?
Right.
Do I actually run this time and be elected or be off? And it's an easy answer for me, and it's the same reason I got on back in 2018 when times weren't so great for the district, is just I've got a vested interest. My kids go to school here, and I've got a little bulldog who's not graduating until 2030, and I want to make sure that I do what I can to help ensure he gets the best educational opportunities that he can get along with everybody else in the district. So it's really just that simple. I feel that from my professional experience and experience with being on other boards, that I can bring some things back to the district and offer my help and my volunteering of my I can't actually say it's volunteering, but giving of my time to the community in that aspect. So there's no particular issue. that got me on then or that will get me on at this point. It's just making sure that, as a public school, we provide the best opportunities we can for all of our kids, and that there's a voice to make sure that that always happens.
For sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And sorry to interrupt on there. I just had remembered that. And yeah, so you have a lot of previous experience on that. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. With young kids in there, you want to obviously make sure the school stays where it is and getting better. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll kind of skip order of questions here. Being on the school board, having served before, what is it that a school board member actually does? Because obviously, for those who are in the community who have attended the meetings, they see all of that. They see what's public. What's the stuff we don't see? And you obviously have had experience with that. So yeah, what has that been like?
It's a great question. Again, and one I didn't have. I had a pretty good grasp on it when I started. I didn't actually know exactly what I was getting into in 18 when I got in, because we were kind of in the middle of a whole, just a tumultuous time with previous superintendent and some turnover that happened there, along with some drama that went along with a couple of clubs that were involved, a club that was involved with the school. So I didn't realize quite how much I was getting into at that point, even though I did reach out to folks who I knew were on the board and asked, kind of what it entailed. So
right.
And I guess I give that background because it totally varies. Like in good times, like right now, the district is doing very well from a strategic objective perspective, from our KPIs, from performance and any metrics. We're doing fairly well, so there isn't a lot of extra time devoted to hot button issues.
Right.
When there are things that aren't going quite as well, or there's extra, whether it's extra hearings or special meetings or closed meetings or those sorts of things, when things aren't going as well, there's more time obligation there, obviously. So
gotcha.
There, besides the regular monthly board meetings that we have, that are typically an hour or less, we have strategic planning sessions once a year, a little bit of educational opportunities, education indoor conference opportunities if people choose to do so, and then we have a couple of closed sessions a year for superintendent evaluation and or other usually personnel related issues, legal issues with the district, insurance issues, etc.
Gotcha. Yeah, stuff that it isn't quite right for the general public to see immediately or anything like that. Yeah.
So
I gotcha.
We're governed by the Open Meetings Act, so unless it meets certain criteria to be able to retire it to a closed session, which there's very specific criteria for that, we have to do everything else in public, but there are a few things for which we do meet in closed meetings. And then there used to also be more committees. There aren't as many committees now. In fact, the only committee I'm aware of at this point, so there's a couple. There's I think a sports committee, and then there's like a land committee, a district land committee. They have extra time obligations and meetings, and I'm actually on neither of those. So
gotcha.
It's pretty vanilla at this point, with mostly just the monthly public meetings and a little bit of strategic planning thrown in, and then there's the one-off phone calls, emails. It's a lot of email communication from the superintendent in the superintendent's office directly to the school board members, and then because of the Open Meetings Act, we can't actually reply back to the group. We have to make sure that we're erring on the side of caution as far as never having a quorum, or at least 4 board members talking about official school business unless we're in an open meeting. So there's a lot of communication that gets provided to us by the superintendent and his office, and then one-off back and forth between a board member and the superintendent, and or the school board president and different members of the board in single interactions, basically, to make sure there's no
Gotcha.
Open Meetings Act violation. So there's some of that, but not as much as you probably think.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that was kind of what I was getting at too, because obviously I get in hard times, you have more meeting, like physical commitments, but the stuff that's just, I guess like for students, what would be homework, right? Like the stuff you do at home and stuff. So just a lot of communication back and forth, receiving from the district, knowing what's going on and that type of thing.
Yeah, and I guess I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about like more of a 30,000-foot view of what board governance actually entails, or healthy board governance, in my opinion. So, you know, I get a lot of inquiries from community members or maybe complaints or things they want to talk about, and those things actually aren't necessarily usually a board governance issue, where they actually belong with someone talking to an educator, an administrator, and or the chain of command up into the superintendent before it potentially gets escalated to a board governance issue. Because when I say board governance, basically the role of the board of director, the board of education, is to basically approve policy and ensure that policy is compliant with law and regulations, and that the district is following the policies that have been approved, and then for us to hire a superintendent to implement those policies and hire a team, and then to govern the school district. So we govern the superintendent executes that plan, and then our primary board governance is making sure he's doing what he's supposed to be doing and addressing anything along the way. So I do get inquiries from community members, parents, etc. A lot of times it's redirecting to an appropriate channel within the school, and or saying, I'll certainly take that to the board or to the board president or superintendent if it's a board governance issue, and or you should come to a public meeting and take your opportunity to address the meeting in the public comment section and talk about that to the board.
Right. Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense too. Very much, at least how I'm understanding it, like the legislative and executive branch, right? Like you guys make the policy, you guys make sure that's all going on, and then the executive branch kind of carries it out with you at acting as more oversight to that. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
That's a good analogy. Absolutely. So, I mean, there are, I can get a phone call or a email more regularly, but text message, Facebook message, phone call, email, whatever, from community members at anytime. You never know. Someone will reach out and say, hey, this is going on, and then it's, just plugging those folks into the right resources to make sure that
or some kid with a podcast reaches out and something like that.
Absolutely. Which, gotcha. First time ever, and it's I'm glad to do it. But there's not a ton of extra work.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. Back into the kind of normal gambit that I had here. I know you said you weren't running for any specific issues, like to address any of that, but obviously there are certain things that are, like every school board has things that come up that are current issues. What do you believe is one of the most pressing issues facing the board right now? Your thoughts on that, or things you might want to see that need to be dealt with?
I think it's the same issue for the school district as it is for the business that I run, and for pretty much any businesses that are out there right now, which is attracting and retaining talent. I do.
Gotcha.
It's just in this economy that we're in right now. I'm going to do my best to not stray into politics at all, especially with this being a nonpartisan position.
Just to be clear, I have had previous conversations that have gone into that space. This obviously is not affiliated with the school. If you'd like to share those views, feel free. Feel free.
I'll keep it nonpartisan.
Gotcha.
I will just say, in today's political and economic climate, there's a lot of disincentivation for work. So there's a lot of people out of work. There's a lot of people looking for work, and there's also, multiple job openings right now for every person that's looking for work in our society. So one of the biggest things the district is facing is, we talked about it actually at the open meeting tonight, was one of the issues was bus drivers, for instance, just trying to find enough school bus drivers to keep the routes going. It's crazy, and it's not crazy actually. It's perfectly logical because of the system, but it's the same thing if you apply that laterally to any educator. And I say educator in a broad sense. I think anybody who's working in the schools, whether it's a parapro, a teacher, a food service worker, an administrator, custodian, bus driver, they're all educators and they're all leaders because they're all taking care of our kids every day.
Right. There's some type of interaction with that or some type of support. Yeah.
and they're simply not compensated the way they should be on average, I think, is the biggest issue. And the simplest example is teachers, with how teachers in America are compensated compared to other white-collar professionals, whether it's lawyers or engineers or architects. In our country, it's vastly different than it is in a lot of other countries. Teachers are compensated significantly less in America, so I think that trickles down to every other portion of the educational system, and we're having trouble attracting and primarily retaining those folks. A lot of folks are jumping ship from the educational space to other parts of the industry because we're not compensating like we should be. So I think that is the biggest issue that's facing schools right now in our district. There's not enough teachers and other educators coming in. There's entire colleges and schools that are shutting down their teaching programs because they can't get enough people, and it's going to reach a critical mass.
Gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense, and especially from a financial perspective. Again, each person brings their own unique perspective to each of these questions, and that makes a lot of sense too, and something I hadn't really thought of. Just to kind of piggyback off that, so obviously public schools is a government entity, right? And so ultimately, not government entity, but like sponsored by the government, right? It's set forth by that. I'm obviously a teacher's kid, so tax dollars are what puts indirectly or what put food on my table, right? Like that's obviously how this whole thing works. Yep. How do you feel, especially when salaries for like other white-collared professionals, and I haven't done all the research, this is more of a shoot from the hip question, when those salaries are at a level to where the tax, like, I'm not phrasing this well, but obviously higher teacher salaries do mean higher tax burden. How do you kind of walk that line between we want to provide what's best to our kids, provide the best teachers, while still realizing that there's only so much we can take in terms of taxes before we have to say, hey, there's a line to draw here. Just your thought, any of your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. One, I guess it's a matter of prioritizing where our tax dollars go and how much we're willing to put into what I feel is the most important part of any community, which is the public school system.
Gotcha.
And two, then I think like any other government or government-associated organization, it's a matter of accountability for how those funds are spent in a fiscally responsible way. So I think more funding is necessary, right? And not just funding for schools, but thankfully our state is finally getting smart and started with some legislative and executive issues from the governor's office this year, but they started and they are pushing some momentum for increasing compensation for teachers, for giving student loans, for some other things along those lines to try to incentivize more teachers, more young teachers to come in, then more teachers to stay. So I think, really it just starts with, I'm not a big proponent of big government, but I think it starts with putting our money where our mouth is, with prioritizing public education where it should be within the government's budget, and then
Gotcha.
Making sure it's spent wisely.
Right. Yeah, so both the funding that you get, but also managing it well then. Accountability, like you said, I'm sure that's a huge part of your job, and making sure the money that you guys are given is spent responsibly. That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Cool. No, and actually, you had talked about this a little bit. The role of the public school in our community. Obviously, like you had just said, that's one of the most important parts of the community. What do you believe is the role of the public school in the community, and how do they best fulfill that? What's kind of its purpose, and how is that best done?
I think the role of public schools is to prepare students for success, no matter what that next stage of life's going to be. So, and that's, I think our mission statement as a district fits into that well, to kind of prepare the whole child for success in the next phase of life, focusing not just on typical curriculum or scholastic achievement, but actually looking at a lot of things that our district is doing very well as leaders in the state of Michigan and across the nation with um, project-based learning, with not just making sure kids are ready for college or for trade school, but actually providing opportunities for kids to move on from high school to right into a good job that they're ready for, to be prepared for the real world soft skills that are needed to actually talk to people and show up on time and communicate and
Right.
be responsible and all those sorts of things. Our district's doing a great job being leaders, and I think experience based and project based learning to try to meet that full spectrum of needs, because kids are going to go into all different kinds of channels when they finish school. And I think traditionally a lot of schools have focused on the kids who are going to go to college and or some of the kids who are going to go into trade school, and then everybody else kind of has to figure it out from there. And I think that's a failure, and our public schools need to make sure that they meet our kids where they are, figure that out, figure out a career path for them, and help them grow those skills to be successful in whatever walk of life they're going to transition to. So I think that's our biggest calling as a public school, and I think the best way that we can do that is really to one, get back to funding the schools appropriately, making sure the schools are funded the way that they should be, so that we can have great facilities, so we can have great finance to have attract and retain great educators and curriculum to support, and then stand back and let teachers do what they do best, which is prepare our kids for life.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that's interesting too, because I've obviously noticed the push as a student. Obviously, college, I'm still working through all my views on that, but college in general is not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, there's a lot of benefit to be had for that, but there's been a great push for kids. If you're not going to college, that's okay. Here's how we're helping you. What are some of those things, being on the school board, what are some of those things that you guys have done in recent years to kind of help the students who don't fit into that traditional high school to college to job type of thing?
I think the whole rural tech project and the grant that we started out with, and started kind of with the whole bee project,
Yeah.
and bee, the bee farming and the autonomous smart beehives, and that kind of transitioned into the entire rural tech project, and then this basically this Maven platform or chassis that our school is part of a consortium for. It's a chassis or a platform for students to build like a digital resume while they're in school, and then they study
Yes.
from
Yep.
from middle school all the way through high school, and right now we're trying to push it more into the elementary school going forward. But basically, having kids learn how to work in designing, clothing or apparel, or working in all kinds of different industries and jobs, and going through actually learning how to do those jobs, design an Internet of Things device, how to communicate with things, get excited about project-based learning and hands-on learning, and actually build out like skill sets and certifications within this platform, so that the eventual goal would be to have someone from Ravenna Public Schools like graduate high school with a certification as an actual project manager, and be able to go right into the workplace as a certified project manager.
Gotcha.
And to finish high school with those skills needed to succeed in all kinds of different industries.
Yeah, I don't remember all of the specifics, but I do remember using Maven in high school too. So yeah, I was probably towards the beginning end of that push, but yeah, I definitely remember using that, especially as an online tool too, because I get like you still have to cover the core and all of that. There's stuff can't always make its way into the classroom as much as you want, but that with that integrated online learning tool, I think that definitely would help a lot there. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense there. Yeah, so that was the question I skipped. What does a school board member actually do? Oh yeah, here was a good one. How do you stay focused on the students? Obviously there's a lot of different stuff that can come up at school board meetings. The world is crazy right now. There's a lot of different issues. How do you kind of keep focus on what focus needs to be on, and not let those other issues play into that as members of the school board?
By other issues, like the personal aspect of it, or drama sorts of things?
Something like that. Keeping personal out of professional was actually one of the other things I wanted to ask you. But with, I guess, just keep. At least I feel there's a very good element. There's a lot of value to simplicity. That doesn't mean what you do has to be simple in that we like the instructional methods, but we are here to educate students. Anything that distracts from that is not going to help us in moving that forward. I feel like a lot of the times companies, corporations, or anything like that, you can get caught up in issues that maybe they're financially a good idea, corporations, anything like that, but they don't stay true to what you're meant to do. Mm-hmm. So anything like that, like how do you make sure you stay focused on just the education of the students? Nothing more, nothing less. And I'm sorry, I'm realizing I'm not asking that in the best way there.
No, I think you are. It's okay. I think going back to our mission is really the calling of at least the school board level to help stay focused on what we're doing and why. And I brought my little cheat sheet here, but I think let's see. Oh, it's on the other side. I talked a little bit about it earlier, and I don't have it in front of me, but basically making sure that we're preparing the child for that next stage in life.
Right.
We're focused on the whole child. So I think as long as everything that we do is looked at through that lens, it makes it kind of easy to stay in our lanes and stay out of any other things that may come up that are a distraction to that. I guess would be my best answer to that.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I guess that kind of segues into really what I wanted to ask out of this. Personal issues, pride, anything like that. People are people. Obviously, you want to stay focused on the mission, but there's like whether it be ego or anything like that. I'm not saying you, but how do you make sure to keep the personal out of the professional? A community member comes to you, super passionate about this idea, maybe would get offended if this isn't implemented, but how do you say, hey, I get that this is a community where we are all connected, but at the same time, there needs to be a line to where this is what we do, and sometimes that means saying no to some of these things.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think the best analogy I can think of there is that I run a financial institution for a living, and we also have a lot of stakeholders in the credit union that I run. We have 11,000 members of the credit union, and basically, it's a member-owned, not-for-profit cooperative. So ultimately, we're responsible for our actions to the owners of the credit union, who are the stakeholders. A lot like as school board members, we're responsible to the whole community and to parents as stakeholders. And in the credit union world, it's every decision that I make, I ultimately have to balance what's good for that one member who's coming to me with an issue. They're complaining about a fee or a service charge or an interest rate or whatever it may be, and a practice that they don't like. I have to balance my ultimate decision on not only what's best for that one member, but what's best for all 11,000 members who are owners of the credit union. So I think in the same vein with being a school board member, when I have someone come to me, everybody has their own lenses through which they view life and form their own unique and valid perspectives, and I keep that in mind when people come to me and they're potentially upset about something or emotional. I understand that because I'm a parent too, and every parent is going to be very passionate about fighting for their kids and making sure that their kids get what they see as what they need, and I respect that. And also at the same time, I have to keep that perspective and help them understand that we have to make decisions that are best for the entire district and for all 1,026.5 kids that are in the district, according to the soft count here this fall.
Gotcha.
Not just the one kid. And even
I haven't met the half student yet.
I
I'll have to
either.
meet
I think
him
it's
sometime.
someone who's like the high school halftime and maybe,
Gotcha. Okay, that
homeschool
makes
the other
sense.
half or something
Yeah,
perhaps.
yeah,
But
oh, never mind. I think I have met that
met
student
that kid.
actually. Yeah.
So keeping all of our decisions in that vein, I think, and like anything else, also really just when it comes down to being in any emotionally charged situation, which they are when parents
Mm-hmm.
are very passionate about their kids and about what's going on in their district. Often, I just try to practice as much mindfulness as possible because it's easy to get heightened emotions and heightened responses in that place. And I've actually seen that years ago at the school board level where someone came in upset and members of the school board got emotional in a response, and you just can't do that, whether it's in a public meeting or in personal interactions with folks. So just remembering that people are going to be passionate and do have different perspectives, and their perspectives are valid, and that no matter what someone says about you personally or how they go about it, like I'm the only one that has the power to let that affect me emotionally and decide whether or not I'm going to react emotionally. And if I give that control over to anybody else, then I'm losing that power and that control in my life. And I try to make sure I'm mindful of that in any interaction because they can get personal.
Yeah. No, and there's, like you said, there's definitely a good place for emotion in there. It's kids. We want to be passionate, but I see what you're saying about kind of stepping back and, okay, I see that. That's valid. But at the same time, we want to make sure we make the decision that's best there.
Yep.
Perfect. No, well, yeah. Is there any way people can connect with you? What's the best way to do that? To give you perspective, I'm releasing these 1 or 2 weeks before the actual election. Just for people who want to learn more or maybe ask you a question or two, what's the best way to do that?
Email.
Email?
The district
Okay.
email that I'm assigned is the best way to get a hold of me.
Gotcha.
jbamford@ravennaschools.org.
Gotcha. And I'll make sure to link that.
Yeah, that's the email address that's assigned to me by the district. That's the most efficient way to get a hold of me. It's the information that's posted on the website for contact. If anybody wants to reach out, they have my cell number or Facebook Messenger or whatever. That's fine too. I'll get back
Gotcha.
to folks that way. But it's with what I do, busy. Lots of irons in the fire. Emails, a very preferred method of communication.
No,
for me
I get it.
To start with, at least to set up the appropriate next meeting.
Yeah, all two of the listeners of this podcast will definitely reach out to you with questions.
All two. Mom and Dad, huh?
maybe not even them. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, I obviously don't want to burden you with a lot of that. But at the same time, I figured if people have questions, I'm sure there's a good way to reach out to that.
I'm expecting thousands of emails after this podcast.
Gotcha. I'm not quite at that level yet. I'm sorry. No, but thank you. That's good to know. I guess that was all the questions I had here. Is there anything specific you want to address or anything you'd like to just bring up that you want the community to know, just about the school board in general, anything like that you'd like to talk about?
I guess I would. That wasn't a question that was on the list, Isaac. But
I do.
No, maybe it was actually. I don't remember that one, and it's fine. I was just
gotcha.
I think the biggest thing I would like people to know is I feel that what's going on with the district right now is great. I think Ravenna Public Schools is in very good condition. If we look at our strategic plan, if we look at teaching and learning, relationships and communication, facilities and finance, those are our primary areas. If we look at our target goals in all those areas, it's amazing to see what happens when a district actually has strong board governance and a team that's aligned from the school board all the way down through superintendent and the district leadership team. And we have a great, talented slate of young administrators right now and aligned school board, and we've got a great strategic plan, and we're doing very well. We're at or ahead of target on all the areas of our strategic plan.
Sweet, that's awesome.
I mean, it's amazing. If you start with the general fund balance, so we were in a crisis mode and we're below 5% a few years ago, and we had the state getting involved, and now we've got a couple months worth of expenses in our general fund balance, and then that trickles down to so many other areas, with the high school being remodeled, with a curriculum that's digitized and standardized, and with all the great things that are happening in our district. I think we're in a really good spot right now. I'm just very thankful to be part of that and want to continue to do my part to see that through moving forward.
Gotcha.
So honored to be in that position, honored to be a small part of that, and want to make sure that I have an opportunity to stay at the table and see that continues through the rest of my kids' education through at least 2030 and moving forward. And
for sure,
this term that I'm up for is a 6-year term, so that would see me through 2028, I think, if I'm doing my math right. So would love to have the opportunity to keep giving back and keep helping things move forward in a positive way, because I think really special things are happening at Ravenna Public Schools. We're getting a lot of recognition locally, state, federal level for some of the World Tech Project and experience and project-based learning stuff that we're doing, and it's just cool to see the leaders that are growing within our organization, and
for sure,
great to be part of.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Speaking of the Rural Tech Project, obviously I wasn't personally involved, but I know a lot of good has come of that. I've talked with a lot of people. A lot of my friends are in it. Can I tell you one real quick story about that I thought was hilarious?
It's your podcast. Yes, please do.
No, when it was first getting set up and everything, obviously there were meetings with certain government officials and all of that. Mr. Wilson came up to me, the high school principal, one time, and he was like, so we just had a meeting the other night, and it was on Zoom, and I was with like a guy in the USDA, high up guy or whatever, because obviously that's where funding comes from, at least in part. Mm-hmm. And he's like, there's all these high level guys here, and in the chat I'm just typing B pun after B pun after B pun, and I about broke down laughing there.
Was the chat visible to everyone?
I believe so. Do
you have any good B puns that you want to share from that?
He didn't tell me the specifics,
but
have
to be good. Oh, he was typing?
Yeah, he was typing all of them.
Wilson was.
Wilson was.
I thought you were saying you were.
No. No, it's all good. I just thought he told me that, and I about broke down laughing, because I was like, that's such Mr. Wilson. Going back to the whole administrators thing, I had a good relationship with Wilson, and no, you're definitely right in that you've got a good slate of talented people in there, and no, it's fun to see where this is going.
It is. It's all the building principals are fantastic. All the administrators, like it's exciting to see that kind of energy in any organization and to be part of it and to see where that's going to take us moving forward. I think I would put our district leadership team and our educators up against any district around our size or smaller. I think we're building something that's really special and cool, and what we're doing with the facilities moving forward is going to make us that much stronger, and just can't wait to see where the district goes with what we're building. It's pretty cool.
Sweet. Well, awesome. Thank you, sir, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice job. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Insights. If you liked it, please leave a rating on Spotify or YouTube and comment on your thoughts. I'd love your feedback on this episode, the podcast in general, or ideas for future episodes. You can message me on Facebook or on Instagram at Isaac Cantola, all lowercase. I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for listening.